Hello. It's that time of the month once again. The time of the month when you and I walk together down nostalgia lane. Alright, welcome to Alyssa Jean's Reviews. This is Nostalgia Lane, the monthly series of videos that I do in which I rewatch and review an old film from my childhood and tell you what I think about it now after my recent rewatch of the film. This month, I am reviewing The Goonies from 1985. I think this is the third film out of 5 that I've done that is from the year 1985. I don't know, great year for films, I guess. So, the usual format, I'll first start off with a brief intro as to why I chose the film. Then I will get into what I felt about the film at the time that I saw it. And then I will get into what I feel about it now after recently watching it again. And then the last thing I'll do is give a rating out of 10 for the film based on my viewing of it today. So let's go ahead and get started with part 1. Why did I choose this film to review for Nostalgia Lane? Okay, so why did I choose this film? Well, I've actually been thinking about this one for a while, ever since I first started doing these Nostalgia Lane videos. I wasn't sure if it quite qualified because usually I have been doing films that I watched a gazillion times when I was younger and memorized them and watched them over and over and over again and wanted to see what it felt like to watch it again for the first time in many, many years. Whereas this film wasn't one of those for me. It's one of those for a lot of other people in my age group. So I kind of wanted to see what the big deal was. I had not seen it in a very, very long time. And it's definitely one that I saw on cable and then we taped it and then I watched it on videotape. But I didn't watch it over and over and over again like Clue or Back to the Future or Superman 2. This one, I don't know. For whatever reason, I did not carry it forward with me into my adulthood. It's not that I had any memory of hating it or not liking it in any way. It just didn't stick for whatever reason. And it seems to have stuck with a lot of people that I know, especially here in Oregon, where I live, a couple hours from where it was filmed. It's really, really huge. And anyone who's in their 30s or 40s or 50s is really big into this film even today and has a lot of nostalgia for it. And for whatever reason, I just didn't carry it with me into my adulthood. And not that it was anything bad with it or anything. I just stopped watching it after a certain point and I couldn't remember it at all. So out of all the films that I've watched, this is the one that was freshest to me upon rewatch. It's the one that I had the least memory of from watching it before. So the next section I do about what it was like for me watching it as a kid is going to be a pretty short section because I don't remember a whole lot about it. But I'll go ahead and tell you what I do remember. The biggest section is going to be once I get into my feelings upon the rewatch. Okay, so as I said, I don't remember a whole lot of what I thought of it when I was a kid because before this rewatch, there was very little that I did remember about it. I kind of had a vague sense of why I liked it when I first saw it, that it was just kind of this exciting adventure movie like Indiana Jones for kids, I guess. And I remember kind of having this vague sense of like wishing I was one of those kids. Like I wanted to go on these adventures with them through these caves and waterfalls and all that cool stuff and find treasure. I kind of had this vague sense of that. I, of course, remembered the big dude. I think Sloth is the character's name. I didn't remember the character's name, but it was a very memorable character. That's definitely one thing that really stuck out in my memory. I remember Corey Feldman being a smartass. I remembered, well, not that I remembered, but I saw online and stuff that reminded me that Sean Astin was in it and that Josh Brolin was in it. I wouldn't have necessarily remembered that those were the actors. They were very, very young. I remember having a big crush on the chick in the movie, the redhead. um, I used to have a thing for redheaded chicks, and maybe it's because I wanted to be a redhead chick. I don't know. Let's not think about the psychology of my inner workings. We don't need to go there. It's a very dark place. but I did have a crush on that particular girl in the film. That stood out to me. And I remember that the villain was the same woman who would be in Throw Mama from the Train a couple years later, which was a terrible film. And of course, the thing that really stuck out to me is the beautiful landscapes, the beaches with all the big rock formations, and how beautiful it was. And then I remember in the 90s when I came to the coast of Oregon for the first time and saw the area of where Goonies was filmed. I was blown away. I was like, wow, this magical place really actually exists in real life. It was largely filmed in Cannon Beach and Astoria, and it actually takes place in Astoria. And to me, this was this magical, mystical place. It didn't really exist. So the first time I went to the Oregon coast, I was like blown away. And now I live 2 hours away from where Goonies was filmed. Now it's just kind of, yeah, it's a normal place I go to all the time. But I do remember just being mystified by the setting. That is a very real setting. And I now live 2 hours away from it. That is about it. That's all I can remember. As I said, I do remember liking it. I don't remember disliking it. I don't remember why I stopped watching it and why it didn't stick with me the way it did with a lot of other people. But I did have a very positive sense of the film. So now let me talk about my rewatch, because that's when I really dove into it and really started remembering things I had forgotten all about, because I had forgotten a lot of stuff about this film. So let's get into that. Okay, so I have a lot to say about after my rewatch, so this will definitely be the longest section of this video. This section tends to be the longest section of all my Nostalgia Lane videos anyways, but I think especially so for this. So let me get into it, because I got to talk about some of the side things before I even get into the plot itself. So first of all, one thing I was reminded of that I forgot completely about is that this film was one of the most effective product placements of all time, with the Baby Ruth candy bar. I forgot about Sloth eating the Baby Ruth candy bar, and the sales of Baby Ruth, I think, went through the roof after this film. Like, it was a huge, huge thing. Like, I think the Baby Ruth executives, or whatever company Baby Ruth is made by, Hershey or whatever it is, was probably making like gazillions and gazillions just because of this film. I had kind of forgotten about that until we get to that scene in this film when I rewatched it. The other thing that I had forgotten all about is the Cyndi Lauper song from this film. Good enough for me, yeah. Good enough for me, it's good enough. I had forgotten all about that song, and it kind of started making me think about how that was such a big thing in the 80s to have a pop star do the theme song for your blockbuster movie and make a video about it that plays on MTV and shows scenes from the film, and you watch it over and over and over again, and it's free promotion for the film. It was like a brilliant idea in the 80s. Can't do it as much now because MTV is not a thing anymore. Maybe they still do that, but it wouldn't be as effective because MTV was huge, huge, huge. So you have a big pop star make your theme song and then have a video for it with scenes from your film. It was golden. It was golden for them. But I had forgotten about this one. It just started making me think of like Kenny Loggins was like the soundtrack master. He had like Footloose and a Top Gun and probably a couple others, and the Peter Cetera song from Karate Kid 2. I am the man who will fight for your honor. And then Bryan Adams had the song from Robin Hood, the Prince of Thieves, which by my memory was also I am the man who will fight for your honor. Because I cannot remember what that Robin Hood song was, but I always get those two songs mixed up. Anyways, That's what I started thinking about as the 80s and how they had the tie-ins with MTV, and I just completely had forgotten about the Cyndi Lauper song. And I just actually went back and watched some of the music video on YouTube, and there's all these wrestlers in it. It's so weird. Uh, but anyway, that's probably the most nostalgic thing about rewatching this. It was like, oh yeah, the Cyndi Lauper song. So, anyways, now let's actually get into the film proper. Okay, so let's get into the film itself. I have to say that the first act really sucks. like, uh, through the first act of this film, I was thinking to myself, oh my God, what have I gotten myself into? Why am I making myself watch this? This is so bad. The first act is just, setting up the characters and setting the scene and introducing us to the fact that they're going to lose their house. And apparently they're all going to lose their houses. It's very confusing. And there are three main characters here. Sean Astin's Mikey, the kid from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, who in the credits it said his name is Data or Data. I didn't catch that in the film. And then the fat kid, Chunky. So these three main characters through the whole entire first act, 90% of their dialogue was indecipherable. Like, to me, they were going anytime they talked, and they were always screaming at each other, and they were talking like little kids, and I could not understand a fucking word any of them were saying. I'm like, enunciate, people, enunciate. This does get better throughout the film, especially with Sean Astin, and then Chunky, and I still had a hard time with Dada throughout the film, but he also has the accent and was always shouting. But he became a little bit easier to understand as the film went on. But at the beginning part, it was like their dialogue was indecipherable. It was just a lot of it was just like kind of nonsensical. The first act of the film. But then once they start kind of going after the treasure and going into those cool caves with the waterfalls, and then I started connecting to that nostalgia from when I saw it as a kid and remembering that feeling of wishing that I could be like one of those kids going on this treasure hunt in these really cool places. So then I started like, okay, I'm getting into it. Like now I'm remembering why I like this film, and it makes a lot of sense. It really is, as I mentioned earlier, an Indiana Jones for kids films. Although as a kid, I also watched the Indiana Jones film, but you know what I mean, like an Indiana Jones movie where kids are the protagonists. It was also one of the early films, I think, that really popularized that format of having teenagers and younger kids all mixed together. Usually some of them are brothers and sisters together, usually a mix of boys and girls going together on some sort of adventure. I call it the Goonies format, and I don't know if Goonies is the film that really originated that, but it's used a lot in YA films and shows. Stranger Things, I think, kind of really brought it back. Although Stranger Things, I think, has better characters, and you can understand what they're saying all the time, and they're more well-rounded characters. That's the other thing about the Goonies. Like, I don't think a lot of the characters were really all that great. It was just, it's very surface level stuff. You just gotta roll with it. Remember, it's a kids movie. Have fun with it. And I was really able to connect with my feelings as a young person watching this movie, and like really wishing I could be in that group with them and going on all these wonderful adventures and all of that stuff. And because it made you feel like, you could be Indiana Jones. Where when you see Indiana Jones do it, he's larger than life. He's this old dude, or when you're a young kid, he's old. And you'll never be that. You'll never be as cool as he is, but when you see just regular kids doing it, then you could really connect with it. And I think that was kind of part of the magic of the Goonies, and maybe that's why so many people in my age group still connect with it. They still connect with that nostalgia because maybe they had similar feelings when they were kids. And I think there's something to be said about that. So, yeah, then he started getting into when Chunky first meets Sloth, and they go off together, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember this, and then I started having fun with it. I did have to really put myself in the mindset that this is a kids film. That's who the target audience is, specifically kids in the 1980s. I don't know whether or not this would translate to kids today if they watched it today. I don't know, actually. I don't have any kids, otherwise I would have them watch it and see. But I don't know. Because I don't know if kids today still have that same kind of sense for going on these adventures, searching for treasure and all those sorts of things. Maybe they do. I don't know. I don't freaking know. I don't have kids. So I don't know whether it would translate, but it definitely... the target audience was kids in the 1980s, and it was very effective. But I did have to kind of view it through that lens, especially like, you know, how they did all the slapstick with the villains, very Home Alone-esque, even though Home Alone was a couple years after this. The two male villains just had something happen to their balls like several times. Just typical slapstick. That didn't bother me. What bothered me, though, was the lack of continuity. It was very much like watching a Wile E. Coyote cartoon, and this was live action. Even if it was made for kids, it was live action, so I wanted to see some continuity. Like, for example, like those two guys, like, fall and slip on that log and then, you know, land on their balls and go, oh! And then, like, the very next scene, they're right behind the kids, like, right behind them, ready to catch them. I'm like, wait, how did they do that so fast? I thought they were in pain. And the worst is toward the end when Sloth throws Throw Mama from the train, his mother, off of the pirate ship into the water. The very next scene, she's back on the pirate ship again, and she's cutting the rope that her two sons are tied up to. And I'm like, wait, how did she get there? What? This is like a Wile E. Coyote cartoon, and I know it's made for kids, but I still need to see some continuity. Like, at least show her getting out of the water and getting back onto the ship again. Like, it's like, what? So that was a bridge too far for me. Like, that I couldn't just kind of suspend disbelief for, but a lot of the other stuff in the film I was able to suspend disbelief and just kind of have fun with this film. And of course, I gotta talk about that climax when they're in the cave with the waterfalls. I don't know that was shot in Oregon. I think that might have been a soundstage. But then once they go out and you see the rock formations, and then you see this pirate ship go by them, that really stuck with me. And as I mentioned earlier, it's one of the things that blew me away when I first moved to the coast of Oregon. I was like, hey, it looks like the Goonies. Like, that place really exists. So seeing that now, and now that I actually just visited the coast like a week ago from the time I'm recording this, one of the most beautiful places on earth, and I feel really lucky to live a couple hours away from it, and I was introduced to it through this movie. So watching it again, I'm just reminded of that and how much I was blown away by the setting when I first saw it, and how much I still enjoy being there now, and how fun it was to see what is now a familiar area to me on this film. So I thought that was a lot of fun for me. I do have to mention the Hey You Guys of it all. So when Sloth comes in, he goes, Hey You Guys! I had kind of forgotten about that, and I have gotten into like arguments with people over the years who go, Hey you guys, like they quote that, and I'm like, oh, that's from the Electric Company. And they're like, no, what do you mean Electric Company? No, it's from the Goonies. I'm like, no, it's not. It's from the Electric Company. So for those of you who think that the Hey You Guys originated in the Goonies, let me explain something to you. There was a show in the 1970s called The Electric Company. It was made for little kids. It came on after Sesame Street. It was on PBS. I used to watch it with Sesame Street and Mr. Rogers when I was a little kid. You can look it up on YouTube, the theme song. It starts off with them going, Hey You Guys! And then they play the theme song to the Electric Company. So I assume that Sloth in that scene, who has shown to be someone who watches a lot of television, was just quoting the Electric Company. So it drives me crazy when people think that originated in the Goonies when it clearly did not. Do people not understand your pop culture, American pop culture from the 1970s? The Goonies did not originate that. Okay, anyway, anyways, I just got in a lot of arguments with people over that. Like, what do you mean Electric Company? That's from the Goonies. No, it is not originally from the Goonies. Anyways, um, I do kind of have to mention Sloth because I was curious if it would appear to be problematic to me upon my rewatch because I do work with individuals with disabilities. He, I mean, I guess was a person with disabilities when when you look at it. But I don't know. Like he's portrayed in a positive way and looks like he was abused by his terrible siblings and mother, and it turns out that he doesn't deserve to be chained up and he's a good guy and he saves the day and he goes off to live with Chunky apparently at the end. I wonder if he cleared that with his parents. I don't know if he did that or not, but um I don't know. I don't think it was bad. I actually don't. I was a little worried that it might not have aged well, but I don't know. I don't have a huge problem with it. Although I myself am not disabled, so I cannot speak for that community. I do work with people with disabilities, but not the same thing. So to be fair, I can't say that people who have disabilities wouldn't find that problematic. I can't speak for them. But for me, just watching it, as a non-disabled person who works with people with disabilities, I didn't think it was that problematic at all. Um, so, anyways, I think I can go ahead and wrap this up and give you my rating out of 10 after my rewatch of The Goonies. Okay, so I'll give my rating out of 10, 1 being the lowest possible score, 10 being the highest possible score. But before I give that rating, let me just say that as I was watching this, because of how bad the first act was and how incomprehensible the dialogue was, how paper thin the characters were, all of those things, I was thinking about a 5 out of 10. But then it occurred to me that I just did a couple weeks ago a review for Star Trek, the original motion picture. Not a Nostalgia Lane video, but I'm a separate series of videos where I'm rewatching all of the old Star Trek films. And I gave Star Trek, the original motion picture, a 5. And I was like, well, the Goonies, I enjoyed the Goonies more than I enjoyed Star Trek, the motion picture. I just was able to really connect with the nostalgia. I was really able to see why I liked it in the first place and why maybe other people my age still really cling to it. And I enjoyed the experience of it overall. I just suspend a lot of disbelief, but I enjoyed my experience of it overall. So to say that it would be the same as Star Trek, the motion picture with a 5, that is completely unfair. So I'm going to go ahead and give it a 6. So it's a 6 out of 10. I did enjoy it. I still the first act and a lot of the other things I mentioned was still a little much for me, so I can't give it much higher than a 6. But I'll give it it's a 6. This makes it the lowest rated show that I've done, or movie rather, that I've done for my Nostalgia Lane series. But that doesn't mean that I hated it or anything. I just and I just don't, I guess, have the level of nostalgia that I had for some of the other films that I've done in the series, and that's probably why it ends up as the lowest rated film. But 6, that was not bad. It's fine, whatever. A 6. Anyways, that is it for this month's edition of Nostalgia Lane. Join me next month in February, where I will review another film from the 1980s. Actually, Netflix has a whole bunch of new films from the 1980s, or new to Netflix, I should say, from the 1980s. And there are 2 that I really want to do. So I'm probably going to do one of them in February and one of them in March. So the one that I would like to do in February is The Neverending Story. One of my favorite fantasy films from when I was a kid. Now, this one I have watched in my adulthood. I probably watched it, I don't know, maybe 10 or 15 years ago. It's still a while ago since I've last seen it. Even if I have seen it as an adult, it's still been a while. So it'll still be fun to revisit that favorite fantasy film of mine from my childhood and see how it plays to me now. So that will be in February. Please check out all of my other Nostalgia Lane videos. I've done Back to the Future, Total Recall, Clue, and Superman 2. In addition to this one, so check out all of that. Please subscribe if you have not already for all my content on Star Trek, Star Wars, the MCU, and everything else that I do. And I will see you soon. Bye, everybody.